Get ready.
Hi, welcome back to Trancing in the Sheets. My name's Kaz Riley. This is the Hypnosis 24/7 Live Network, and this is season 2. And have I got an amazingly wonderful guest for you today? Karen Hand is one of the people I admire most in hypnosis. I met her in person for the first time last year in New York and was blown away. So I am absolutely proud, and I just feel so privileged to have her here today. She's, of course, a published author, a truly amazing hypnotist. So Karen, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's absolutely amazing to have you.
I'm so thrilled to be here, Kaz. I can't tell you how much I admire you. And I'm so thrilled to know you. I mean, I'm just thrilled. I think you're wonderful too.
Thank you. So, I mean, everybody knows what an amazing hypnotist you are. I mean, you've got great things going on, the virtual chapter. There's KarenHand.com. You're published. You know, you're an amazing speaker. But not everybody knows about what you did before you came into hypnosis full time. And I know, you know, you've had one of the most kind of successful, you know, busiest hypnotherapy practices in Chicago. It's the Chicago area, isn't it,
Yes.
in which you work? Yes. But prior to that, you know, we all know your amazing kind of speaking, presenting voice. But you learned how to do that in a particular place, didn't you?
I was on the radio, yes. I started out because when I went to college, I'm old. When I went to college, girls could be nurses or teachers, right? And so I went down the teaching path, except I wanted to be a star. So I also discovered as a lab class, because a speech coach I had in high school said, take a radio class because you might have to teach broadcasting someday. And I said, okay. I took the class. I had to do some lab hours in the college radio station and walked in and said, I've found my home. I knew instantly. Put me in front of a microphone, let me talk or read aloud, and I am home. And that was my home for a good 30 or 40 years. That was one of my 3 huge epiphanies in my life, Kaz. That was one of the first ones. I walked into the radio station and went, oh my God, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Oh, wow.
The second epiphany is really apropos for Trancing in the Sheets, because I was working in radio and saw a guy walking down the hallway from the back. And I went, oh my God, he's got cute buns. I want to get to know him. And I got to know him and we met. And the first time we actually met, I said, I'm going to marry this man. It was just an epiphany. Oh my God, this is who I want to live my life with. We've been married now 30 years. So that one worked.
Cool.
The third epiphany brought me to hypnosis. That's where I was doing a radio show and had a couple of hypnotists on my show to make fun of people because I didn't know anything about hypnosis. And they didn't make fun of people. They talked about what hypnosis can do. And I said, let me come out and be hypnotized. I was, and epiphany 3, oh my God, that's what I want to do with the rest of my life.
Wow.
I've got a lot of life left. I might have more epiphanies, but those are the 3 so far.
Wow. Well, I hope there's a lot more epiphanies, because all of those have been extremely beneficial to lots and lots and lots of people, haven't they? You know, but going back to that first epiphany where you ended up in radio, but you ended up in particular doing a show that's particularly pertinent to Trancing in the Sheets, didn't you? Yes. Which I know, you know, will have led on to help you with things that you do within your clients now. But tell us a bit about that particular radio show.
So I was on a morning show, a very popular morning show in Chicago, where I was the voice of reason with a couple of really crazy guys. And I was also the public affairs director and news director. So I wanted to do something really impactful. It was going around at that time in the late 80s and early 90s where people would, Dr. Ruth Westheimer did a sex talk show, and there was Love Lines. And we wanted to do something local in Chicago along those lines. So I was the voice of reason. I was the best friend character. The radio station was B96 and I was the queen bee. I love that. And I still keep that. I still keep that. At any rate, so we decided to do this sex talk show for teens, and I auditioned people and said, you know what, I am going to be the best friend character on this show. And we got hired a psychiatrist who was really brilliant, Dr. Kelly. to join me on the show. He did the medical advice and I did the best friend advice.
Cool.
And we started taking calls, and Kaz, it became the #1 talk show in its time slot for 10 years. We
Wow.
never had a complaint filed against us with America's FCC, which way back then was, you couldn't talk about anything like that. We talked about it clinically, and we talked about it truthfully and honestly, and never had a complaint filed against us. Parents loved us. I like to say that I taught an entire generation of Chicagoans everything they know about sex. And I like that. I'm glad about that. Because I'm pretty liberal. I don't know if this works in the sex world or not, but you're the expert there, Kaz. But I don't follow rules.
Nope.
If I had known rules,
no, neither do I. And yes, that absolutely works. Yeah.
I kind of thought it might. So I just never knew about rules. Well, I've known rules and I can follow rules, but I've found that it's so much better for me when I do what is my calling, when I do what feels good and right to me, as opposed to following some kind of rules. If I'd known the rules about advancing my radio career, I'm from Oklahoma. I got my first radio job in Oklahoma, the local radio station, because I didn't know you were supposed to start small. That was the 50th size market in the United States, which is big for starting a career, right? I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to start in my hometown. If I'd known that, I would have gone someplace else to start. But I didn't know that, so I auditioned at the radio station closest to where I lived, the one I listened to.
There you go.
I didn't know that you were supposed to climb up the markets. So when I was ready to leave Oklahoma, I didn't send tapes to the next size market. I wanted to go to Los Angeles. I sent all of my tapes to Los Angeles. Now I'm in Chicago, so it's obvious I didn't go to Los Angeles, but back then, Los Angeles was the #3 market in the country and Chicago was the #2 market. And the biggest radio station in America at the time was WLS Radio, a clear channel radio station. The tapes that I sent to LA didn't get me a job in LA, but a program director there said, I know a job opening and I'd love to send your tape there. Can I do that? And I said, sure, absolutely, because I assumed it would be in Los Angeles. It wasn't. It was in Chicago at the biggest radio station in the country, and they called me and hired me. Now, had I known the rules, I probably wouldn't have had the guts to say, yeah, I'll go ahead, or to send those tapes out there. I didn't know the rules, so I did what felt right to me. I felt ready for a big time radio station. That's what I went after. And guess what? The congruence must have been there because the big time radio station hired me. I didn't know that a girl wasn't supposed to ask a guy out. So when I became interested with a guy with the cute buns, I asked him out when I wasn't getting the response that I wanted to get as quickly as I wanted it. So I didn't follow those rules either, right? And I believe it holds true when I'm talking to people about this very tender subject, that let's set the rules aside for a moment and talk about what you're feeling, what you're wanting, what is right for you. And let's go down that path instead. I think I like to take action or walk my talk, right? And so very early on in the early stages of the Chicago Gay Pride Parade, as an example, my radio partner and I were the only 2 people from a radio station that would be in the parade. The first one that came along when I had a sex talk show, I said, we're going to be in the parade. Of course we are. Well, this year, now that was 1992, okay? This year in Chicago at the Gay Pride Parade, our lesbian mayor led the parade. She was the Grand Marshal. My, have we come a long way.
And this is it, isn't it? You know, this is one of the things that, you know, we've certainly been talking about in terms of things have changed so much. And you know, that is one of the kind of the things where, or why I started teaching the sexual freedom hypnosis stuff, because a lot of the stuff, certainly that I was taught and was working with, was, you know, back from the 1980s, 1990s, and of course everything has evolved. But you had this radio talk show for teens. You've got teens phoning in asking questions that they really couldn't or wouldn't ask their parents, which is probably one of the reasons why the parents loved it. But we now know that that has now changed, don't we? The questions have changed, the topics have changed, the answers have even changed. And, I think that's, how we approach that as hypnotists, as therapists, is actually really important, isn't it? We need to change.
Yes. The age at which people start having these thoughts has changed. The information that they have now has changed. I felt it was an interesting position to be in, because when my daughter was in grade school, elementary school, and high school, her mom did a sex talk show. Sometimes it embarrassed her, I'll admit. Although when she went to college and she had a question, Mom was the person she called because I had the answers. That was a great thing. But her friends all knew that her mom was that trusted person on the radio. And when they had questions, they would sometimes ask me. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because I think parents think that, oh, my kids can't be ready for that yet. They can't be talking about that yet. My daughter was in 6th or 7th grade, I believe, when I was at one of her soccer games. And she was out playing on the field, and one of her little friends came up to me and said, "Can I ask you a question?" She took me to beside the school so nobody else could see, right? And she looked at me with these earnest eyes, and as best as she could, I can use real terminology here, right, Yes?
Of course you can, yeah.
Okay, she looked at me and said, "Can you get pregnant giving a blowjob?" So here I am holding my state. Even before I was a hypnotist, I knew how to do that, right? I was holding my state because I wanted to go, what? This is what you guys are talking about at lunch? But I held my state. I answered her question honestly and walked away, and of course couldn't tell my daughter that we had that conversation, couldn't reveal that confidentiality, but it gave me a real sense of what they were actually discussing and what was really going on. I got that also doing the show. But it's interesting that long before parents have any idea that their kids are talking about this or thinking about this, parents should understand kids are watching them from birth. They're watching them modeling their parents. If their parents have a loving, wonderful, huggy, feely relationship, that gets normalized. If they don't, the lack of attention, the lack of huggy feely gets normalized, right? So kids are learning all along the way, every place they go, and they're talking about things and learning things. If we can answer their questions, if we can talk to them honestly, if we're not afraid, if we own our own, then we can have that conversation with somebody, right?
Well, I think that this is it, isn't it? It's that being able to do that with our children. I think for a lot of people that's still, they struggle to do it even with their own partner. So having that kind of conversation with your own children, obviously for me, it's pretty easy. I'm at that place where, here I am with, an internet talk show that talks about sex and hypnosis and lots of other stuff as well, with a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old sons at home. And actually, they're really cool about it. I thought, it might cause them some issue, but they actually think it's a pretty handy thing to have. And they just ask the questions. And like you say, often, their friends will ask questions. And we just, I've always had that thing of I just answer the question honestly in a tone of voice as if they just asked me how to bake a cake without kind of any horror. And, we just find that's what works, because this is where I think a lot of people learn, or, kids learn about embarrassment, shame and guilt around sex from how their parents react when they're spoken, when they're asked about it. And if people are embarrassed and, they show shame and guilt, or certainly shame around it, then this is where some of the hang-ups and things start to be seeded, isn't it? And as you say, if two children see a loving, caring relationship with two parents, that love each other, whether they're same-sex parents or, a traditional kind of heterosexual kind of relationship parents, but two parents that love and respect each other, then that's their model for their relationships in the future. Whereas if they're living in a war zone, we sometimes get that thing where people stay together because of the children. Well, children aren't stupid, are they? They pick up on that. And, that has, a lot of issues. I'm sure we see the result of living in that kind of environment, often years down the line when, you know, the people run into relationship issues themselves, isn't it?
Yes, and it's that fear or that shame, partly coming from, I don't know how to deal with this feeling in myself, that causes some of the problems, right? If you can't really talk about it. And of course, I'm not pointing the fingers at parents, because there are a lot of people. Hypnosis, by the way, does not happen just with a hypnotist. Hypnosis happens all the time, every day, on purpose and not on purpose. When one seeks out a hypnotist, sometimes being on purpose can make it more difficult. If there's no reason to do it, suggestions can just come in all the time. People can say to, you know, a little kid can say to a friend, oh, tell me about that. And if the friend says, oh, that's a horrible thing, man, that's a suggestion. That can set up an imprint. So that kind of thing happens. And the more we can be congruent, the more we can, you know, I think what it comes down to, Kaz, I'm just thinking out loud right now, but maybe this is true. If we could teach everyone authenticity, to actually just be themselves and explore themselves curiously and then make their own decisions, wouldn't that be a closer way to get to harmony?
Absolutely. And so many other things. I mean, just even things like self-worth, you know, just by being yourself and happily being yourself in every aspect of your life, so you can follow your dreams, if that, you know, that are your dreams and not necessarily somebody else's dreams. You can be yourself sensually and sexually, and, you know, within your business, within your relationships, and just with how you want to be, you know, the kind of person that you want to be or that you feel that you are. That is truly it, isn't it? But people fear their own authenticity. They seek it out in others and fear their own, which is really interesting, isn't it?
It's in the first thing that we do sexually, that's kind of where it starts, because everybody explores their body as babies. Everybody discovers, oh, that feels good or that doesn't feel good. And then, you know, a good, caring, responsible parent will come along and say, oh, don't do that. Oh my God, you can't touch yourself there. Isn't it interesting that the safest sex you can have is masturbation?
Well, this is it. And the best form of self-discovery, isn't it? You know?
And that's the first thing we tell people, or tell little kids, you can't do. We don't. I'm going to take myself out of that category because I don't. But the first thing that many parents say is, don't do that. Oh my God, what are you doing? Don't do that in public, because the parents might be embarrassed if somebody else sees their child doing that. Right?
And it's, yeah, and it's so interesting as well with that, because that's where those first seeds of shame are sown, isn't it?
Right. That's where the imprints happen accidentally. That's what I meant about the suggestions are taken and imprinted, and then 10, 20, 30 years later, they end up in our office, Kaz, because they have all this shame. It's a shame.
It's a shame. There's so much shame, really, isn't it? You know, I mean,
no pun intended.
I know, and I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, I haven't got it with me now, but one of the projects that I've been working on is helping women understand their bodies, because I think women, and I'm generalizing here, but generally have a much harder time with masturbation than men do. They're even more shamed. I mean, nice girls just don't do that, right? And, you know, one of the things that I've been taking out, and I know I showed you one of these when I saw you in Chicago, was I was literally out in the middle of Amsterdam, stood on a bridge in Amsterdam, asking people if they knew what this was, this body part that I got in my hand, which is the female clitoris. And, you know, and people were, and the response I get to that is everything from absolute fascination right the way through to complete kind of, you know, I don't want to touch that, right, and everything in between. And yet, you know, it's interesting that the most pleasure-giving part of a woman's body, or certainly one of the most sexually responsive parts, you know, women themselves don't even know what that looks like. And that's absolutely astounding, isn't it? And are still shamed about, you know, yet when you go into you know, the pleasure chest or look online, when you look at all the sex toys that are available, they're all aimed at women. The majority of them are always aimed at female pleasure. So we've got this real kind of disconnect going on between, you know, what happens and what people talk about.
Well, that's right. That's right. And that's where the incongruity and the shame comes from. Because we do this, but we don't talk about this. We do this, but we should do this. You know, I love marriage. I'm thrilled to be married. I want to be married. I don't want another partner. But marriage is a human construct. It's not real. Monogamy is not real. It's a human construct. And we did it to keep order, right? To maintain order out of chaos. Because if you go around humping your neighbor's wife, it's going to cause hard feelings someplace, right? So there was a rule. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. So if you're pure, if you're good, if you're the kind of person somebody wants to be, you can't lust in your heart. Now, I know you're from the UK. We had a president, Jimmy Carter, God, years ago, Kaz, who had an interview in Playboy magazine and admitted Jimmy Carter, still alive as of today. I'm thrilled. He's a very, very Christian man, but a good man. He builds homes for the homeless still in his 90s now. But he admitted to Playboy that he lusted in his heart. And there were people all over going, oh my God, what a sin. I can't believe that our great Christian president has that kind of sin. Give me a break, right? Jimmy Carter was just being real. We have thoughts. We can talk about those. But it causes, it makes me jealous. Makes me uncomfortable. I better just not talk about that. Of course, don't talk about it rather than deal with the feelings. That's the way to do it, right? Isn't that the way we do all sorts of things? Don't talk about your authentic feeling about it. Pretend like it's not there.
And it works out so well, doesn't it, when people do that? Doesn't have any repercussions or cause any problems further down the line at all. But that's the thing, isn't it? You know, is that I think this is the fear, because it's the fear of what other people will think when they talk about these things. And, you know, certainly, I know you'll see this too in your office. People come in and, you know, the fact that we advertise that we deal with these things, I actually advertise a non-judgmental approach. And, you know, people come in because of that, because the biggest fear is actually being judged, not necessarily of what they're doing or not doing. It's about what other people may think.
So interesting that this is really what hypnosis is all about across the board, isn't it? To be non-judgmental and allowing somebody to be authentic with their feelings, with what's going on, with the mind-body connection. What my audience, Kaz, when I was doing that radio show, didn't understand primarily was that the brain is the biggest sex organ in the body, the most important sex organ in the body, the only one that really counts if you want to get right down to it. The brain and how we're thinking about it. The brain and closing off and, oh my God, I've got to be good and perfect and I've got to be the best good little girl can cause vaginismus. How do you relax when that's what you're thinking about? How do you have a wonderful sexual encounter when you're thinking about, oh, am I upsetting them? Am I not pretty enough? Am I too fat? Am I all of this? So in our head, when we can let go of that and be and enjoy the feelings that occur and enjoy what's going on between two consensual people, you know, I understand. And I get it, that rules have to occur. We don't want people raping others. We don't want people taking advantage of others. That's good human common sense and interaction, right?
Absolutely.
But it spills over. Those rules spill over into consensual sex too. If two adults, same sex, opposite sex, changed sex, if they get together and decide that they want to dress up in puffy animal costumes, let them do it. Who cares? Right? If they want to swing from chandeliers and they both want to do that, who cares? Let it go. Go with the feelings. But we don't talk about trusting your feelings. So we don't teach little kids that, yes, this feels good, and this is how you can have that good feeling, and this is how you can protect yourself when you have that good feeling. Right? When I was doing the sex talk show, Kaz, in the 90s, it was recommended for oral sex to use a dental dam. That was the professional explanation. And my psychiatrist partner would talk about the dental dam and using that. Have you ever tried it, Kaz?
Not a dental dam. No, it doesn't sexy, does it?
No, it doesn't. I had to try it. That's why I have a friend who's a dentist, and they gave me the dental dam, and I'm like, why would you ever use this? I mean, it was funny. It was hilarious. It brought some levity to the event, but it didn't bring any kind of, love or romance to it. Let's put it that way.
Oh, it's eroticism, it's that. Yeah, it's one of those.
Unless we teach an erotic use of dental dams. You can, there's a new product for you. Erotic use of dental dams. And if we use it, say it with your accent, it's even sexier in the United States,
Right, what, the erotic use of dental dams?
I think you'll have to have a demo, but there's a product in case you're interested, and if you can get your husband to go along. But I mean, we're having some fun here, but the point is, if we can laugh about it, if we can have fun with it, if we can say, yes, this is completely silly, but here's what it's for, and here's how you can protect yourself, and here's how you can take that information and adapt it, then we're really doing something, don't you think?
Well, this is it, this is exactly it, isn't it? It's being able to take all of that and adapt it and do something really wonderful with it. So everybody finds the thing that they like. Everybody finds their own little curves and kinks, and I think we all have those. But again, people are afraid of, not, kind of almost now we're this weird place at the moment where people are frightened of being labeled not vanilla. And then, we've also got people that are frightened of being not vanilla enough, depending on where they are. And I just be any flavor you want, it doesn't matter, mix it up, be vanilla one day and, pistachio and chocolate chip the next. It doesn't matter.
And it might be that you like different flavors.
Yeah.
And it might be that you like the same flavor every time. I know people who only order vanilla ice cream. It's the only kind of ice cream that they enjoy. I like all sorts, and I like it to change it up a little bit.
That's it.
That's what we need to know about humanity, isn't it? What are your preferences? And how can you safely indulge in your preferences, whether it is reading books, going to movies, or sexual encounters? We don't all like the same movies. That's why there are so many genres.
Well, this is it, this is it. And, every once in a while we might watch a different kind of movie and it might open a new door for us. And sometimes we think, definitely not, that's not for me. And that's fine, isn't it? And I think with sex, it's so important, but it's also important that being able to ask the questions. And now, I mean, we've all got our friend Google, we can look up anything. And actually, I found certainly with things like fetishes, and people come in and, a person with a fetish generally feels that they're the only person that has it, that nobody else has had this fetish before. And, normally I can just Google it and go, look, here's 3 websites all about your fetish. Yeah. Therefore, we can deduce from that, you're not the only one. And then we can find out, often it's not affecting their lives. It's often the fear is that they will be rejected because of it. But of course, what they're doing is rejecting themselves, aren't they? So it's about that self-acceptance again. And that, again, starts from being very young, where if we learn to accept the pleasure our bodies can give us, we're not shamed for that with things like masturbation, about sensuality, about being able to feel things. Because often, even that feeling, it's a pleasant feeling when we're a child that masturbates, it's not actually a sexual thing. It's a sensual thing, where people worry about it because as adults we see it as sexual. But for, the 4-year-old that's just found that pleasure feeling, it's just a pleasure feeling. It's nothing more than that.
Right. And when they take their first step, we're so excited because they figured out balance.
Yeah.
This is just figuring out sexuality, and it's all part of life. And I'm not saying that we want to let go of all of the mores or responsibility around it, but it would be so nice if we could teach people to casually talk about it without so much shame, without so much fear of being judged.
Well, it's even, I mean, it's even more than that. It's even more than discovering sexuality. It's actually discovering pleasure. And, you know, it's the one thing, isn't it, that we're almost shamed into, if we feel we have pleasure-filled things, you know, if we have a pleasure-filled life, and pleasure comes in so many different ways and so many wonderful things, but it's often the things that we're taught to feel bad about, isn't it? And it's almost now we're permitted to be anxious, but we're not allowed to feel happy or pleasure-filled. You know, that's the message that's kind of been churned out there. And then how you deal with anxiety is then to take tablets that actually numb down everything. So they don't make you happy. They're called happy pills, but they don't make you happy. They just kind of make you not sad, which is not the same as being happy. And we know in terms of our sensuality, our sexuality, our pleasure, it's about being able to feel and enjoy that to the max, isn't it? And that's actually what gets rid of anxiety and sadness, isn't it?
It's what gets rid of smoking sometimes. Yeah. I've worked with a couple of smokers where I've talked to male, well, I've worked with many smokers, but I have no problem using this line, especially in particular on a male smoker, because it's so much more common for males than women. But I say, you know, you've got a choice of ways to, well, they'll tell me, you know, I've got this craving, I'm stressed out, whatever it is. And so you've got ways that you could deal with that. You've got all sorts of choices of ways that you could deal with that. You can step outside for 7 minutes and slowly commit suicide. That is a choice. That's the one you're making. Or you can go into the men's room at work and masturbate. And going outside in the cold for the cigarette is more attractive to you than that. And they'll go, I didn't know that was a choice. Well, why not? You're ostracized. You're having to get rid of outside, get away from everybody else, because none of us do that thing that you're doing. So you go out and have a cigarette. When, if you want to get by yourself and have some pleasure, you could do that too. And I'm just curious about the choice that you're making. And that often breaks up that idea of I have to deal with this craving in this way. Yes. Right? Yes. And I had a couple of guys right there with that conversation say, now that I know I have a choice, I can make all sorts of different choices.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if they go off and masturbate instead of have a cigarette, or if they go off and read a book, or if they just redirect their attention. But the point is, they got their goal, which was to quit smoking.
Absolutely.
And have a better life.
Yeah, and hopefully much more orgasmic one if they're
more pleasurable, right?
More pleasure. Yeah, and you can't get enough of that. You know, I think, you know, we need more and more pleasure in life. And I have to say, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here today. We've run out of time, sadly. Whizzes by. So tell everybody where they can find the amazing and wonderful Karen Hand Harper.
I love you very much. I am at Karen Hand. Just to imprint that on your mind, Karen Hand and Dr. Kelly Johnson did a talk show. And so we had a promo, take your hand off your Johnson and call Private Lives, which was the name of it. So now maybe you'll remember Hand. It's KarenHand.com or Karen@KarenHand.com. I made it as easy as possible.
That's a nice, easy one to remember. So on there's your trainings, because I know you do some trainings. There's obviously the virtual chapter. People need to check that out. You've had some great guests on there. I was one once.
Yes.
But you do have some amazing guests on there, along with the very wonderful, of course, Michael Watson, who I also love dearly, and he's just fabulous, isn't he? So thank you so much for trancing in the sheets with me today. Couldn't have had a better time.
Loved it, and it just went by too fast.
It always does, doesn't it? And if you're enjoying this season of Trancing in the Sheets, remember we also have season 1 where we had lots of wonderful guests there too. You can now find us on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, Roku, Facebook, YouTube, you name it, we're on it. We're getting everywhere. You can contact me on just about any social media with the handle @TrancingSheets. You just put any messages you want in the boxes below wherever you happen to be watching, or you can just drop me a DM on any of those as well, on Twitter, on Tumblr. you name it, we've got it. So get in touch, let us know what you would like to hear about on Trancing in the Sheets, anything to do with sexual freedom hypnosis or hypnosis itself. We cover just about everything. So thank you so much for watching today, and we'll see you next time on Trancing in the Sheets. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Get ready.